Dear brothers and sisters, for the longest time, the media or some outlets of the media make it its goal to portray Islam in a bad way. They make it their purpose to show that Muslims are bad, Muslims are an endangered or an endangerment to this society, and it's a bad thing to be a Muslim or to be around Muslims or to have Muslims in the United States. And this is not something that's new. This is something that's been going on for years and years. A few years ago, the whole thing with withdrawing the Prophet ﷺ in a disrespecting manner, came about, and the media also chose to take sides and also present Islam in a bad way. And recently, as you might have heard, some group of individuals who believe that they're helping humanity, they wanted to go around protesting around different mosques and different masajids around the United States while being armed, right? So you have these armed individuals protesting against Muslims and Islam in different masajids around the U.S. And this happened a couple of months ago in a masjid in Arizona, where people were protesting and just didn't want Muslim presence in that area. And something like this makes us wonder, makes us think, whose fault is this, right? Having people that are so ignorant about Muslims and Islam, people that have nothing but hate to show or to present about Islam. Is this our fault that they are in that situation? Is it their fault? Is it a combination of both? Now, if we look at the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he says, "Al-mu'min al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min al-da'if wa fi kullin khayr," that a strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than a weak believer, and there's good in both of them. And if you look at the explanations of the scholars to this hadith, the strength that they talk about here is not necessarily just the physical strength of a believer. This is a aqidah strength. This is strength in believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is strength in our belief system. This is strength in the way we do our ibadat. This is strength in the way we pray. Strength in the way we fast. Strength in the way we deal with other people's Muslims and non-Muslims alike. So, what does it mean to be a strong believer? What does it mean to be this believer that the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that this believer is more beloved to him than those weak ones? And we have to think about each of ourselves individually and try to rank ourselves. Do I consider myself a strong believer, or do I consider myself a weak one? And like we said, this is not a true or false answer. This is not yeah, I think I am a strong believer or I'm a weak believer. This is something where we have to think and look at how we conduct our lives. Because I think a large part of this problem of having all of these ignorant people coming and protesting and causing all these issues and causing all this mayhem is partially our fault, right? Our fault because we didn't do our due diligence in representing Islam. We didn't do our due diligence in understanding Islam ourselves. If somebody wanted to have a conversation with us about Islam, we probably can carry a conversation to explain the 5 pillars. We can explain the Shahada, we can explain the 5 daily prayers, we can explain our fasting, although we probably won't be able to explain it if we go into questions, but explain our fasting, explain our giving zakah, and explain the basics. And that's good that we know this stuff when we're dealing with your general public, when somebody who's just curious to know about Islam. But we know a lot of those people have done their research. They know probably more about Islam than we do. So when they have a conversation with you, when they want to try and understand, or when they come up with an argument, they know what we're going to respond with. I was doing some basic research on Google about, you know, Islam and the arguments against Islam, and a lot of them that were hating on Muslims and Islam, they would tell you, here's what Muslims will tell you, here's what Muslims will say, and then here's why it's wrong, or here's why, you know, it's not true, and here's the argument against it. So they've already went a step or two ahead of what we're trying to accomplish and do. So the first step is really for us to understand Islam ourselves. Understand why Islam has different rules, why Islam does things, why did the Prophet ﷺ tell us to do certain things. And some of them are very basic. Some of them are things like, you know, having the allowance of being allowed to marry 4 women in Islam, right? You trying to go into an argument with somebody or trying to explain to someone about why this is allowed. A lot of Muslims don't know a legit answer, or trying to argue or have that debate with someone. You know, the rights of women in Islam, the rights of our parents in Islam, right, of, you know, just having that relationship with your siblings or with your coworkers, or the way we deal with money, financial situations, financial transactions. A lot of us have the bare minimum, the basics of these arguments. And this is not good enough anymore. People know, people argue, and people debate. And again, you don't want to go into a blind argument or into an ignorant argument with someone just because they want to argue. But at least we need to know, at least we need to understand. And this takes us to the second step of being proactive rather than being reactive to situations. You know, we look into the issues that have been going on, and as I mentioned a few years ago, you know, some guy decided that they want to draw the Prophet ﷺ in an unpleasant manner, and, you know, represent Islam, or represent the Prophet ﷺ in that way. Now, 2 things could have happened. One is that by that time that guy made his drawings, people already knew who Muhammad ﷺ was. His characteristics, his manners, what he did in his lifetime. Or the other option, or the other scenario, is that that man comes up with these characteristics, drawing how he thinks the Prophet ﷺ is and his character is, and then we react to that. But at that point, the damage has already been done. It takes a whole lot more to fix a broken glass than it is to preserve a good one. You know, all what you need is just bubble wrap a glass vase. And you can save it if you're doing, you know, if you're moving it from point A to point B. But if you just take that vase and transport it and it breaks, even if you put it together, even if you take this vase and put it together, it's not going to be as good as it was before. And this is our problem. We wait for problems to happen for us to react. If you look into the business, into a business model, businesses who react to problems are the ones that usually fail. Businesses who wait for their model to collapse, or engineers who wait for their technology to fail, are more likely to cease to exist in the future. What needs to happen is being proactive. You know, you go to the dentist every 6 months, or you're supposed to go to the dentist every 6 months to get your teeth checked out, you get your teeth cleaned, make sure that your teeth in a good health. Preventive maintenance. And this is what we need to do to our communities. We need to have this preventive maintenance around ourselves. How do we do this preventive maintenance within our communities? We start with our basic families. You live in a house, you're probably surrounded with 10 or 15 neighbors. You live in an apartment complex, same number, if not more. Now, what have we done to present Islam in the right manner? What did we do to present Islam and present the Prophet ﷺ in the right way, so when things like this happen, people can say, well, no, this is not true. I know I have a Muslim neighbor, and they don't do such and such. A survey was saying that 25% of Americans would rather not have a Muslim neighbor. And I guarantee you, a lot of our neighbors may not know that we are Muslims. Believe me, a lot of people cannot distinguish between the different religions. So unless we come out and present ourselves as being Muslims, and hopefully good Muslims to that matter, then we start being proactive. And this is not just by you walking out and waving hi or saying goodbyes as you walk in and out of your house. No, this is going out to your neighbor, seeing, does your neighbor need something? I'm sure we all have an elder neighbor around us, or a neighbor that's in need, or somebody, or a neighbor that just had a baby, or that's about to have a baby. There is something or a situation or a circumstance where we can reach out to those neighbors. We need to do our part in being proactive. And this also goes with our community. The different masajid needs to reach out to its neighbors. And this cannot happen without the involvement of every and single one of us. This is what we need to do as a community. We need to reach out to our neighbors. We also need to make sure that we are true with ourselves in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We feel that in front of people around the masjid, or around Jummah prayer, or around our families, we need to be honest. But then if we go to our workplace, then honesty drops out of the equation. Then we're trying to cheat people out of doing things, then we're trying to lie to people, we're trying to be mean, we try to be rude. And believe me, people associate that not with you, but with Islam. They look at how you treat your family, how you treat your wife, how you treat your children, how much time you spend with your family. The characteristics are just as simple as being truthful. I mean, how many of us can really, truly believe and know for sure that they have not lied to their coworkers before? How many of us have truly went out of their way to help their coworkers, to help their friends, to help the people that are in need? Are we truly participating in a community? Because if you ask any of us, do you feel that you are part of this community? They'll tell you yes. Do you want to be part of the American community? Do you want to be part of this society that you live in? And usually the answer will be yes. But then how many of us really go and participate in our community events? And I'm not talking about our Eid prayer or Eid carnival or the different activities that the masajids do. No, I'm talking about actual community events that happen in Cincinnati. And I guarantee you there's almost one every single weekend throughout the whole year. Community event that's community-related problems. Problems about hunger. Events for the needy. Events for the sick, for the diabetes, you know, for heart. I mean, any illness you think about, there's a community initiative. And generally, when you go to these events, Muslim participation is very low, if any. And if we do have participation, then our participation is the bare minimum. We just go and participate in a walk. Just do the walking. But there's no sponsorship into those organizations. There is really no true involvement into this community that we live in. So when somebody decides that they want to, hey, I need to tell the world how horrible Muslims are, we don't have anything else to counteract. We're not the Muslims that help their neighbors. We're not the Muslims that we pray, that we preach that we are. This is what Muslims are doing these days. We always look at the other end to blame. You know, we say, oh, you know, Islam is great, Muslims are great, but you know, it's so and so that's causing the problem. Or so and so doesn't really see the true Islam. And the problem is we don't see the true Islam. We don't practice this true Islam that we want to make people feel and think. You know, we speak great things about Islam, but we don't know those things. We think greatly of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, but then when it comes to practicing what he does, we don't do it. Think about how many of the sunans that the Prophet ﷺ has taught us to do are we doing. And again, those are not the physical sunan that we get stuck behind. You know, this is about how you deal with people. Sunan. Sunan that helps you form this true community. Those are the things that we really need to practice and the things that we really need to be ready to present. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. Ask God forgiveness. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله سيدنا محمد صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. Dear brothers and sisters, what's happening this weekend will happen again. There will become some type of a topic where people will instigate to show that Muslims are bad. Muslims are bad for this society. Muslims are bad for this community. Muslims should be uprooted from this community and shipped elsewhere. We've talked about this 5 years ago, and I'm pretty sure we'll be talking about this again in another 5 years. The hope is that when we talk about this in 5 years, that we have accomplished something. That we have at least embedded something in our children. We taught our children something that they can go on with in presenting Islam to the community. You know, we can speak to our children all day long. We can tell our children, you need to be a good Muslim, you need to practice Islam, you need to do this, and you need to do that, and you need to do all of these great things that the book that we call Quran says that we need to do, and what the Sunnah says that we need to do. We can preach all day long to them, but until they see us doing what we want them to do, it's going to come in from one ear and go to the other. And I know we've all seen this. You can sit in a math class where the guy or your teacher is teaching you about math all day long. It's not until they start practicing or giving you some examples before we start learning, oh, okay, now I get it. Now it makes sense. And then what do? They say, it's your turn. Here's a problem, fix it. And that's when you start connecting the dots. Now you can say, okay, so now I was told the theory, I was shown an example, and now it's me or my turn to practice this example. So how can we be this Islam that we want people to think that this Islam is? You know, how much are we getting involved into this community? And again, your children, your neighbors, the community that you do or you come and get involved in at the different masajid. And then the community where you go out beyond your small circle of friends. How do we want to be represented is the question. Do you want to let it be presented by the media, or do you want to be presented by you and your actions?